Welcome back to day 2 of the Connected Teamwork Summit. I'm your co-host Hylke Faber, and actually I'm here today with my colleague Jennifer Winnick. How are you doing today, Jennifer?
I'm doing well, thanks, Hylke. How are you?
I am good. I'm very happy to be
Okay.
here, and if you're listening, participating, welcome to this second day of the Connected Teamwork Summit. We are exploring this question of how can we stay connected to what's truly important to us, what's truly important in staying connected to each other and to our purpose. And how do we access those vast amounts of intelligence, potential that are available to us when we allow ourselves to go a little deeper and to connect to the space that even goes beyond our thoughts and feelings, something that we can call presence or awareness or soul or something that goes very deep. And then how do we bring that into our day to day in our work with others, in our teamwork specifically with others. Teamwork is maybe every moment. We're always in some kind of team setting, whether it's with our partners, our families, our friends, our communities, our people at work. We're always in some kind of team setting. The word team actually comes from family. It's interesting how these things are very connected. I was reflecting on yesterday, and as I was doing my morning workout, and I did my weights, and then I walked outside the garage where my weights are, and I saw the sunrise, and I teared up a little bit. It's like this sunrise is every day, and I wondered what would it be like if I and if all of us could be more like that sunrise in every moment that we show up, whatever happens in that moment, whether things are going well or not well, um, whether we feel happy or whether we feel sad, whether that sense of the bursting of the sunrise can be with us every moment. And to me, nature is such a powerful teacher to connect us to that place which is so much deeper than where our thoughts and feelings regularly like to go. Today, we're going to continue this conversation about how do we build connectedness. Yesterday, we heard from 6 magnificent speakers about connectedness, and my mind likes to categorize things in like how do you work with connectedness, and those pointers of truth, love, and service keep whirling around in my mind. I was thinking this morning how beautiful it is that our mind is able to make constructs that energize us, that help inspire us, that help us see and be oriented in a certain way. Those 3 words, truth, love, and service, or you could say 3 lighthouses in my mind that help me to steer towards connectedness with myself, with others, and with my purpose. There was so much said about love yesterday, with Carson kicking us off yesterday, talking about appreciation and how when we are appreciating of ourselves and each other, we're plugged in with each other. No matter what happens, it doesn't vary. It's invariable. It's unconditional. We heard from Matt Oppenheimer, leading Remitly, about being flooded. I thought that was so fascinating, being flooded and allowing ourselves the space to accept that we're humans that get flooded and acknowledge that authentically with others. To me, such a beautiful moment of practicing love and self-compassion. I loved Christine Linde's reflection on how important it is to take good care of self and really take care of this vessel that we are and listen to it and keep balanced. So much was said about that. And then we talked about truth, being present. I heard that throughout all of the conversations. I loved Vignachetti's reflection on how we need to be like the Amazon saplings that don't rush towards the light because then they die, not in a race to the top, but they actually gently anchor themselves with roots and take the time for that. And those are the saplings that actually survive. I thought it was such a powerful metaphor, thinking about how we put ourselves in service of something that is actually giving us energy. Vignesh also talked about service and how his wife had refound her inner spark with teaching others how to paint, and in the process, finding our own wherewithal with painting. So this powerful pointer of putting ourselves into service. Erwin Visser, our mountaineer, the Mount Everest mountaineer, talking about how when we set ourselves a goal that we really want, the goal itself lifts us out of our limitations. And Jill Myers talking about how when we appoint ourselves a personal board, it provides more truth. I thought that was beautiful in terms of a principle of practicing both truth and compassion, knowing that I don't have it all myself, the compassionate part, and also talking about the a willingness to allow more truth in. And I find life is such a humbling adventure. I may share an experience I had last night later when we talk with a second with Jennifer about this. We talked about the first first 6 of the 12 team defining moments. And again, these are to me like beacons that we can sail through as a team. There's easier ones. We call them white belt, just to have a little language marker for that. We talked about appreciation and getting to know each other and goal setting and being in service of something. And then the little harder ones of group reflection and also making decisions. And today we'll continue with some blue belt moments, a little harder ones of like what happens when we manage commitments and how do we stay like the sunrise, like that's deep connection when people don't follow through, or we don't follow through ourselves, or how do we work with feedback and coaching. And then we go to what we call the black belt moments, the harder ones, maybe the hardest ones, like the stormiest weathers, like when we have setbacks, when we are in conflict, when we're hurting, when things are ending or people are leaving. How do we work with that and stay connected and be like the sunrise? I'm looking forward to being in this contemplation with you. And I'm also looking forward to having this conversation now with you, Jennifer. So I suggest we turn the table, and I'll give the floor to you, and you lead us where you want.
Thank you, Hylke. Well, you just shared so many impactful moments from yesterday's speakers, and I expect there will be a lot more, many more keepers today from today's speaker lineup. I'm curious if you could share with us what inspired you to put on this summit. Why this? Why now?
I get some goosebumps when I hear what you're saying. I'm a pretty private person, kind of a monkish person. Like I love being with myself. Actually, I was a bachelor for most of my life. The little couch you see behind me, if you see me on the screen, is where I often sit myself down to meditate. And I also noticed that I love working with people. I've been doing this work, and actually that's how I met you as well, being in those rooms, being these workshop rooms, and kind of happened to me, you could say, or for me, where these words that come through and the communion with others just inspires something that my little being sitting on that couch actually cannot access, or at least not as easily access. So there's something that happens in the good book says here, when more than one is gathered in my name, or when we are gathered together, there's something that unleashes. So there's always been a longing in me for togetherness. And then I look into the world, and for a while in my journey, I was like, well, I've seen part of what is true, this constancy, and so it's all bliss, it's all peace. Why worry about anything? It's like, don't worry, be happy in it. One of my favorite songs. Great movie now coming out about that. But then there's also the truth of tremendous suffering in the world, division, wars, and wars and stuff has been always, but this, like, it's so visceral, breaks my heart. Ukraine, Gaza, and endless others that are not in our news as much, but endless others. Climate destruction, polarization in our country. I dread this year of elections in terms of what the risk is in terms of dividing us again. I feel my neighborhood has just recovered from the last elections where the signs were like, no, I'm not talking to that person or that person because they are a what supporter, and now we're neighbors again, and I feel like we're at risk of drifting apart or worse. And so I feel there's a real need in the world for a different kind of intelligence. And what I noticed in workshop rooms is that humans work well with language markers. Now, I learned language markers myself, like, we talked about in our first workshop ever, I think, was about victim player, not blaming, not blaming external circumstances, but taking responsibility. And those words, have stayed with me for my whole life until that's now probably 15, 20 years ago that I first learned about these. And so I thought maybe it's time to introduce a part of a new vocabulary that is a vocabulary of connectedness rather than divisiveness. So it's not about how I feel or you feel, or whether you're right or whether I'm right, or even whether we find a solution. Because the challenges of today are so big that anybody's going to say, like, oh, we're going to solve this tomorrow is not true. So to me, if our core orientation can shift from that to how do we stay connected with ourselves, with the depth of our intelligence, the love, the truth, the service that we are, and then come what may, that sort of unconditional rooting together. That's what I wanted to bring into the world. And I thought, well, if we do a conference about that, then it may be one other signal into the world that there's this possibility.
Yeah. Wow. There was a lot in there. So inspiring. And yes, I remember language. I still think about victim and player all the time. And that was 12 years ago? Something like that. Yeah. So yesterday you talk about language markers, and one of the things that you talked about yesterday, the concepts, was this notion of CQ. So could you share a little bit more about what you see as the pathway to building CQ?
Yeah. So CQ, connectedness quotient, again, deliberately choosing a word that conjures an image for people to relate to. And I think, we have been, somebody years ago talked about IQ, and then EQ came into the world in the 60s. I think it was introduced first, right? And so now I feel I wanted to introduce a different concept, a different kind of intelligence that would not be divisive but uniting. And so I thought, well, let's call it connectedness quotient, which is to me a way to enter that is to first be still. Be still. Be still. In all the spiritual traditions, that is a core principle. Be still. Be still. Not like rigidly still, but be still. Like, let the sound noise of our thoughts and feelings just subside for a moment, or maybe for many moments, and see what opens up then. It's like my favorite prayer is the St. Francis prayer. It's in dying that we're born into eternal life. And to me, that's the death of all the attachments to all our thoughts and feelings, that opens up a space that actually is always already here. And so the access point to me is the contemplation stillness. Now, I used to think that there was one way to do this, and it was meditation, because I was trained as a Buddhist. but then, but that's just, another attachment to. There's endless ways. Music can be a way. Walking can be a way. Sitting can be a way. Having a conversation with somebody can be a way. But to me, there's the second, besides stillness, there's this deep orientation towards inquiry. Like asking ourselves, so what is true? What is more true than the thought I'm having right now? That's to me another part of that. And then not making that cold, but practicing love. How can I be more kind, more compassionate? I love what Matt said yesterday about this. Like, can I be more compassionate to myself when I have a flood moment, or somebody else does that? And then and because I'm a human, how do I put that in service in a team? That all of these things to me are like pointers that can get us there, help us get there.
Yeah. What you're saying makes me think about, I think I read recently, or maybe not so recently, you are not your thoughts. Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true, or you don't need to act upon it. And what you're talking about is that space between the thought, and creating space between the thought and the belief or the action. And, I think the irony is we live in a very connected world, sort of quote unquote connected. We all have, these things floating around us all the time. We're constantly connected and yet so disconnected. And you do a lot of work with teams. You talk a lot about the work you do with teams. How do you work with team members who who already believe they're connected, who don't really feel like they need or think they need to do this work?
Well, my first principle is that I am not the holder of truth. Everybody gets to stand in their own two shoes, whatever that means for them. So to me, it's being clear that everybody has the total choice to participate however they want, including not at all. And so Jennifer, actually, when I met you, I was still in the convincing mode.
Advocacy.
Right. I would go after people.
I remember.
And it's not very skillful. That's my fear of like, I might be losing somebody. I might be failing, right? As opposed to, how can I best be of service? And if the basic principle is presence, then to me is, how can I be still and be present and be that what I want others to become? My choice is being that what I want others to become, even though my ideas of what others need to become are totally delusional. Because I'm married for 2 years. I thought I got it all figured out. Relationships teaches me so much. How I am definitely not an expert on others, not even an expert on myself. Like, I feel like I'm continually in kindergarten when it comes to self-knowledge. And I think when it comes to other knowledge, I'm a fetus with some ideas.
Yeah, that reminds me of another concept in addition to victim player that you taught us early on. I think pre-mindset was knower learner. What I heard you say is this journey from a knower masquerading as a learner to a true learner.
Yeah.
And
what's fascinating to me is I said these words
I know.
to you 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And till today, part of me hasn't quite caught up to what that means.
Yeah.
I think words often have the power to be light years ahead of our own realization. That's where contemplation comes up. It can close the gap between something that we know deep down, but most of us doesn't quite understand or realize or live. That's the difference between like the lived and the espoused culture.
Yeah.
So many teams say, no, we want to be compassionate and respectful and courageous and creative. Heck, yeah, great words.
Mm-hmm.
And then the senior executive walks into the room and everybody falls still. And everybody's like little dogs trying to be nice and perform. And all the wisdom just seems to be cut off in that moment. I'm just making an extreme example, right?
Yeah.
So it's the part of the working with the team is to help people not judge those moments, but first of all, accept that that's happening.
Yeah.
Become aware of it, and then compassionately see if there are other choices that we might want to try out. Not because we should, that goes to the other part of the question, but because we want to. And there's a way to motivate, because a way to motivate for me is to look at the impact, like the Dr. Phil question, how is that working for you?
Yeah.
And on the level of ego, it might be like, oh, great, I feel safe. How is that working for you on the level of the I, the we, and the it? I often like to think about those three. Those three come from Ken Wilber way back when. He wrote many books, and one of this was called The Theory of Everything. I love that title. Talk about humility. So, like the impact on myself, how is it working on me? How I feel when I clam up. What's the impact on my relationship? For example, with the senior executive when I don't speak up. And how does that work for our effectiveness? Do we bring up to the senior executive how things are actually going? Or are we presenting like the good news? No, that's how companies go out of business. So it's and when people become aware of that's the impact of them optimizing for their smaller version, not best sense of self, is that things actually not working very well. So in that way, life is very compassionate and a great teacher because it always shows us in some way when we're out of alignment. So I usually let life, whatever is happening with the team, the result be the teacher. So my question usually will be, so what's your challenge?
Yeah. Yeah. As you were talking about that transformation you've made from the, advocating, the advocacy of these beliefs, these values, to of truth, love, and service, to embodying them. And you talked about truth, love, and service being lighthouses. And I'm reminded of that Anne Lamott quote of, and there's a lighthouse right behind me, that a mentor of mine painted for me. That lighthouses don't run all over islands looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So thinking about today and thinking about this summit, what's your best hope for what your viewers will take away?
That our participants will sit more deeply into their seat. Not like a couch potato, even though it's nice too to do that sometimes, but with that sort of warrior-like energy. Like, ooh, what happens when I truly commit to my own potential, to my best possible relationship with others, and being purposeful, really living my purpose in this world, and finding ways, maybe big ways, small ways, from the speakers that we listened to today, to help being supported in that journey. Like, see the speakers as today as gentle carvers. Like, I love this quote by Michelangelo. He was asked, how did you make this beautiful statue that was later called David? And he saw, I said, I saw an angel in the stone and I carved to set it free. So let these speakers be your carvers to free your angel, to free your potential, to connect you more deeply to what is actually true about you. I know that's my intention for myself, and I look forward to doing that together.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you, beyond the today's summit, what would your best guidance be for people to continue to build their CQ, their connectedness quotient?
To sit with that question. How do I build we live in a world of a lot. Like I want a lot of this and a lot. How do I build a little bit more connection to myself, to others, and to my purpose today? Not tomorrow, today, like in this moment. Things don't have to get better before that happen. I can do that right now. Whether I feel sick, whether I feel healthy, whether I feel euphoric or sad, doesn't matter. How do I build a little bit more connectedness? Maybe it's embracing my difficult feelings. Maybe it's reaching out in a helping way to somebody who needs. Maybe it's putting myself in service of something. Just practice it, sitting with that question and let the practices just come to you. So thank you for guiding us today, Jennifer. I really appreciated your questions. I'm struck by how powerful questions are. So actually, that's another thing we can do for each other. Ask each other questions for deeper illumination. It's very, very helpful. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's been a joy talking to you this morning, Hylke.
Always, Jennifer. Always. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a lighthouse. Being a lighthouse. Thank you for that. So as we are closing our introductory comments for today, that's my invitation to each of you who's listening now or later. Think about what helps you to get more connected to yourself. Not your mini me, but just maybe a little bit bigger. And then maybe another question is, what happens if I expand the concept of me a little bit more to include other parts of me that I might be afraid of and others that I might not want to relate to? What happens with my connectedness when I just open the aperture and do that with soft eyes, a soft heart, an open heart, relaxed stomach, and a firm spine?